Her silence doesn't hurt because she left. It hurts because it forces you to face the parts of yourself you've spent years running from. And if that already feels uncomfortably close, don't look away, because what follows may change how you see love forever. There is a power that almost no man prepares for, the power of the woman who walks away first. Not in anger, not in drama, but in silence. And isn't it strange that what breaks you is not the loud goodbye, but the quiet absence? Because when she leaves, she does not slam the door. She simply withdraws her presence. And suddenly the room is colder, the air heavier, the mirror less forgiving. Every man thinks he is ready for love until he meets the silence of a woman who will not return. That silence is not rejection. It is a mirror. It shows him every insecurity he tried to bury beneath charm, conquest, or distraction. Have you noticed how silence grows louder the longer you wait for an answer? The wound she opens is older than her. It is the archetypal wound, the fear of abandonment, the terror of being unworthy, the ache of a child waiting for a mother's gaze that never comes. When a woman walks away first, she is not punishing. She is embodying an archetype, the anima withdrawing her blessing from the man who refuses to awaken. Carl Jung spoke of this inner feminine as the sole guide of a man's psyche. When she withdraws, it is not personal, it is initiation. The man is forced into the desert of himself, where no validation arrives, no hand reaches out, no voice calls him back. And isn't it terrifying that the very thing you once thought you controlled is the very thing that now controls you? The silent treatment. Yes, even that phrase lingers here like smoke, but her silence is not manipulation. It is revelation. It reveals where you depend on her for your sense of worth, where you have handed over the keys to your selfhood, hoping she would never notice. You tell yourself she left because of something you did wrong. But the deeper truth is this: she left because her spirit demanded to be free from the version of you that refused to see her as more than a reflection of your need. Her leaving is not just hers. It is the call of the feminine archetype itself, walking away from every man who clings, every man who demands, every man who cannot yet hold himself. And here is the forbidden power. When she walks away first, she forces you into the silence where no distraction can save you. Have you ever wondered why her absence feels heavier than her presence? It is because absence strips away illusion. When she was near, you could pretend you were strong, pretend you were whole, pretend you could lose her and still breathe. But when she is gone, the pretense collapses. You do not simply lose a woman, you lose the mirror that made you forget your emptiness. And isn't it strange that sometimes the one who loved you most is the one who must hurt you deepest? This is why the wound feels unbearable. It is not about her, it is about what her leaving touches in you, the part of your soul that has never truly believed it could be enough. The forbidden power of a woman who walks away first is this: she awakens the shadow of the man who never learned to sit with silence, never learned to face himself without her eyes to confirm his existence. And the question is, will he crumble into bitterness, or will he descend into the shadow and finally meet the self he has been avoiding? Because silence has another secret, one most men never survive. When a woman walks away first, the man falls into a silence he cannot control. It is no longer the silence of peace, it is the silence of absence, of unanswered questions, of doors closing without explanation. And isn't it haunting how the mind repeats every conversation, every glance, every unspoken word, searching for the moment it all began to unravel? In this descent, the man does not meet her, he meets himself. The shadow self, the part buried beneath years of pretending, performing, chasing. The shadow whispers truths he does not want to hear. You never truly loved her. You loved the way she made you forget your emptiness. Carl Jung taught that what we refuse to face in ourselves will return in the form of fate. Her leaving is not fate, it is feedback. It is the soul's ruthless reminder that no woman can complete a man who has not confronted his own incompleteness. And isn't it cruel that only loss seems sharp enough to cut through illusion? The man remembers the way she once looked at him. Eyes soft, trust unspoken, a quiet surrender. And then without warning, that look disappeared. It was not anger, it was clarity. She saw what he could not bear to see, that he was still negotiating with his own shadow, still trying to extract love without first embodying it. The descent into the shadow is brutal. Nights become endless interrogations of the soul. Days become haunted landscapes where every stranger's face reminds him of what he lost. Have you noticed how emptiness clings tighter than presence? Because when she is gone, he sees the hollow rituals of his life, the meaningless scrolling, the restless drinking, the empty conquests meant to prove he was not alone. This is the stage where many men collapse. They curse her name. They call her heartless. They tell themselves stories of betrayal just to avoid facing the deeper truth. But bitterness is only another mask. Behind it waits the same terror. I am not enough. I was never enough. And isn't it strange that the very fear you tried to hide from her is the one she now exposes by leaving? The shadow is merciless. It drags him into childhood wounds, the moment he reached for affection and met rejection, the night he cried quietly into his pillow, promising never to need anyone again, the silent vow, if I am strong, they cannot hurt me. But love broke that vow, because love requires weakness, and weakness requires trust, and trust, once betrayed, reopens every scar. This is why her leaving feels unbearable, not because of who she was, but because she unknowingly became the archetype of every wound he had not yet healed. And here, in the silence, he meets the most dangerous question of all. What if I was never truly loved? What if every kiss was just mercy? What if every embrace was her way of holding the broken boy I still hide inside? Have you felt how questions can burn more than answers? The man tries to escape. He fills his nights with noise, friends, music, distractions, women whose names he forgets by morning, but none of it works. The silence follows him. Because you cannot run from the archetype. You cannot distract yourself from the shadow. It sits with you in every empty room, waiting. Jung called this the nigredo, the blackening, the first stage of alchemy, the death before rebirth, the burning away of illusions until only ashes remain. But most men do not reach the fire. They drown in the smoke. They blame the woman. They rage against fate. They collapse into bitterness, carrying the wound into every future love like a curse. And isn't it tragic how some men never realize that her silence was not punishment, but initiation? The shadow descent is not meant to destroy. It is meant to strip away every false layer, every mask of pride, every illusion of control, every desperate attempt to own what was never his to own. What remains is terrifying. A man stripped bare before himself, no validation, no approval, no woman to distract him from the ache. But hidden in this darkness lies the turning point. The moment when he stops chasing her ghost and begins confronting his own. Because silence has another secret, one that doesn't just break a man, it remakes him. Silence is a crucible. It either destroys the man or it remakes him. And in that silence, where no hand reaches back, where no voice answers the desperate call, something begins to shift. Isn't it strange how the very thing that once felt like death now begins to whisper of rebirth? The man discovers that the silence does not only echo loss, it echoes truth. It tells him what no lover could say aloud. that his hunger for her was never just love. It was also dependency, projection, the attempt to find completion in another soul. And isn't it unsettling to realize you never wanted her fully, but only the version of her that kept your own wounds quiet? The turning point is not loud. It is not triumphant. It comes in the smallest moment, often at night, when exhaustion breaks the resistance, when he is too tired to run, too tired to chase. In that stillness, he realizes he does not need her to face himself. He only needs the courage to stop running. Carl Jung said that the death of illusion is the birth of consciousness. This is that death, the death of the illusion that she would save him, the death of the illusion that someone else could heal the fracture within. And isn't it liberating to discover that love's betrayal can become love's initiation? The man begins to see the woman differently, not as savior, not as betrayer, but as mirror, a mirror that shattered, forcing him to notice the cracks that had always been there. Her walking away was not cruelty, it was clarity. She withdrew because she refused to participate in his illusion, and that refusal was the most powerful gift she could have given. At this stage, bitterness loses its grip. He no longer wastes energy cursing her name, no longer clings to fantasies of revenge or desperate reunion. He sees that her silence was not abandonment, it was instruction. Have you ever felt the strange relief of realizing the story was never about them, but about you? This realization is the storm breaking. It is the ego's collapse, the moment when he stops demanding the world confirm his worth and begins to cultivate it himself. The turning point does not mean the pain vanishes. The ache remains, but the ache transforms. It is no longer just the pain of loss. It is the pain of growth, like bones stretching, like a heart learning to hold more than it once believed possible. And here emerges the first taste of freedom. The man begins to sit with silence, not as enemy, but as teacher. He no longer begs it to end. He listens, he breathes, he allows the emptiness to expand without filling it with distractions. And isn't it profound how silence that once screamed now begins to sing? This is the moment when individuation begins, the slow process of becoming whole, no longer split between the man who performs and the man who hides. The shadow is no longer denied, it is faced, and when faced, it loses its tyranny. The forbidden power of the woman who walks away first is that she becomes the unseen guide of this transformation. By withdrawing, she initiated him into the oldest mystery, that no love can save you from yourself, but it can point you toward the path you were too afraid to walk. And isn't it ironic that her absence becomes the very presence that remakes him? Here the man reaches a subtle awakening. He realizes he does not need her return to become whole. He does not need her eyes to see his worth. He does not need her silence to haunt him anymore because he has learned to sit with his own. This is the birth of strength that is not performance but essence, the birth of love that is not clinging but clarity, the birth of presence that is not dependent but grounded. And yet this is only the threshold. The real journey is still ahead because awareness is not enough. He must now live differently. He must embody the rebirth. He must step into life not as the man who lost, but as the man who finally found himself. But silence has one more secret, a secret that transforms not just the man, but love itself. Rebirth is not dramatic. It does not arrive with trumpets or apologies or sudden reconciliations. It arrives quietly, like dawn seeping through the cracks of a window, unnoticed until the room glows with light. And isn't it beautiful how healing often comes not in the thunder, but in the hush after the storm? The man, once shattered by her absence, now breathes differently. He is not rushing to prove himself, not scrambling for attention, not clawing at the memory of what slipped away. He has stopped running. In silence, he discovered the one truth no woman could give him, that his worth is not borrowed, it is not negotiated, it is not gifted by another's gaze, it is his birthright. And here lies the forbidden power of the woman who walks away first. She forces the man into rebirth, not as the lover who wins her back, but as the soul who wins himself. Have you noticed how the strongest people are often those who were once broken by absence? Rebirth is individuation, Jung's word for the soul, finally becoming itself. The man is no longer split between the one who performs and the one who hides. He accepts his shadow, not as enemy, but as companion. He no longer fears silence, for he has learned to sit with it and hear its music. And isn't it strange that what once felt like a curse now feels like initiation? The woman's absence remains, but it no longer chains him. He no longer prays for her return. He blesses her departure, because her walking away was the medicine he did not know he needed. At this stage, the man can finally love without chains, because he no longer seeks to be completed. He can finally see a woman as she is, not as a projection, not as a savior, not as a vessel for his unresolved hunger. He can meet her not with need, but with presence. And isn't that the paradox? That only when you stop clutching are you finally ready to hold. Here the archetypes shift. The man is no longer the child seeking a mother in every lover. He is no longer the beggar hoping for scraps of validation. He becomes the grounded one, the one who carries his own center. And from that center, love flows, not as demand, but as offering. If you've ever felt this kind of silence, you're not alone. Tell me in the comments how you faced it. The forbidden power of the woman who walks away first is that she becomes the unseen midwife of his rebirth. By withdrawing, she forces him to meet the emptiness he was avoiding. And by meeting it, he learns that emptiness was never the enemy. It was the womb of his becoming. Have you felt how, when you finally stop clinging, life begins to breathe again through you? This is the mystery every ancient philosophy tried to whisper. The Stoics called it self-mastery. The mystics called it surrender. Jung called it individuation. And Alan Watts called it the dance, the recognition that life is not about clinging, but flowing. The man, once broken, now carries a different presence. He does not chase, he does not beg, he does not fear loss, because he has already survived the greatest loss, the loss of himself. And in finding himself again, he knows no absence can undo what has been reborn within. This is the final liberation. What once felt like loss now breathes like liberation. The woman who walked away is no longer enemy, nor fantasy, nor savior. She is archetype, the anima who withdrew her blessing to awaken his soul. And in her silence, he finally hears it, the sound of his own soul returning home.